Hello there and welcome to this webinar. We're going to be looking at how InterBase is powering up a number of ISV businesses through this webinar today. I think the official title was how ISVs are accelerating innovation while reducing costs thanks to InterBase. But I think a really good summary is basically powered up by InterBase. So my name is Stephen Ball and I'm joined today by Mary Kelly. Hello Mary.
Hello.
So just a quick bit of background on us both before we kind of get into the webinar. For those of you who don't know me, I've been around Rad Studio and InterBase for many, many years. I was originally a VAR for InterBase with commercial applications running around the world. Before joining joining the InterBase team through Embarcadero and ending up being the product manager for a few years and co-inventor of the patented change views technology. And Mary, your background is pretty good with InterBase as well, isn't it?
Yes, InterBase was actually the first database that I ever utilized or even learned. So InterBase and I have a nice long history, and being able to be a part of the team has been an amazing experience.
Yeah, Mary's she's been quite modest. She's certainly our go-to representative internally for the SC team here for InterBase questions, and sits as part of the InterBase core team as well. So a good bit of background between the two of us to help us through today. So just to kind of go over what we're going to be looking at today. First of all, we're going to start off having a look at how InterBase fits into the ISV business model, and I'm going to be drawing on some of my background and experience there with that. And then Mary's going to be taking us through the different versions of InterBase before we kind of then delve into a few of the really interesting customer cases that we have for InterBase around the world. So let us get in. So we're going to kick off by looking at InterBase and its existence within an ISV business model. Now, I know from first-hand experience, having been an InterBase VAR for many, many years, that there's a huge amount of value that an organisation can get from using InterBase, and it's really important to look at the total ownership of the database and also the options that it brings you in terms of revenue creation from a business point of view. So data nowadays is really one of the most valuable assets of any business. If a business loses their data, they have a high chance of going out of business. So being able to manage, look after, back up and protect that data, to be able to encrypt it at rest, to be able to conform with the ever-changing data security and data compliance regulations globally, being able to have the data on any platform that you're moving to, allowing you to pivot with your customer demands, is a critical part of being able to define and direct where you're going as an organization. And especially as an ISV, typically ISVs are smaller development outfits with a few developers, and that ability to be able to change and move is critical to being able to provide the kind of customer experience that is sometimes lacking from the much larger organizations where they have to take a bit more time around their directional changes and get a lot more sign off. Being flexible and agile as a smaller ISV provides a great option, and InterBase can really help support that kind of business model. So whichever direction you're going, InterBase provides high scalability from a single mobile phone device right the way through to a server running hundreds of simultaneous connected users. And we'll see that with some of the case studies later on. It has an incredibly small memory and on-disk footprint, but yet it can expand up to take full capability of much larger servers running much bigger deployments. So wherever you're going, you can take that same business logic and configuration for stored procedures, for triggers, for change views, for tracking changes, and put that into a database that works across the board. And one of the other things with InterBase is it's very affordable. In terms of mobile deployment now, if you've got RAD Studio, Delphi or C++ Builder for Enterprise or Architect Edition, you get the ability to deploy InterBase to Go runtime royalty free at runtime on those mobile platforms. So that's a brilliant way to be able to get out onto those platforms with very secure enterprise grade database engine, which you can then run offline, managing data remotely, but then still be able to track what changes have happened for different subscribers. There's a lot of capability within it, way more than you're going to get with any other database that you're going to get onto mobile. And that cross-platform support really does allow you to pivot from one thing to another as customer requirements change over time. But one of the critical things really is about the fact that it's a zero admin database. I know firsthand, having experienced the differences between supporting and managing 500 sites that were running InterBase to then merging with another company who was running a .NET product that had SQL Server behind it. And at the time they had a fifth of the customer base that we had. That fifth of the customer base had about 10 times the support cost. We had 2 full-time DBAs just supporting those databases, whereas the support team were given 15 to 20 minutes training for using InterBase. And with some in-house tools that we'd used using the InterBase APIs, it was very, very easy to manage and support. So let's have a look more into the kind of the ISV business model and how it works and how we can gain value out of InterBase through some of the things that I've learned over time. So ISVs have loads of different things that they do. And if we look at some of the kind of the key activities of an ISV business, it's about creating software that's generating revenue through vertical or horizontal deployment. So that's either across the business or specializing in a specific business area. And along with the software that you deploy, you're going to have supporting assets that run with that. And that can be hardware that you're connecting into. I did some stuff within the leisure industry. We had card printers that were developed that were running out and producing kind of barcodes and photos printed on cards, and encoding magnet stripes, mag stripe cards and so on. And then also we have products and services that go along with the product. So setting up and configuring and installing and getting going, learning the best way to use the software that's working across a business, providing consultancy, providing business insight. As an ISV, you're in a privileged position of learning from lots of different businesses, and being able to monetize that through the services and then the software that you have is a key way to be able to move forward. And some of those things bring out key partnerships, and that might be that you have specific things that you outsource to key partners. You might have specific hardware vendors that you work with. For example, we have Zebra, who do kind of these card printing machines, and then Epsom for receipt printers. You work with the people you need to work with. But we also had an in-house training and development team, but also in areas that we couldn't reach particularly easily, we had localized partners who we had outsourced training to and make a markup off them. In terms of value creation, it's really critical as an ISV in terms of time to market, being able to update and get things out, but also minimizing the risk to business. One of the things that you can really create value through as an ISV is how you help other companies de-risk their business. So in terms of the management of the data and the security of the data and the kind of the risks that come to a business around that, being able to say to a customer, look, we can de-risk your data protection requirements and the security side, and we can make sure that your data is being backed up and is secure and is accessible when you need it. All these kind of things come into play. And by de-risking their business, you can create huge value for your own. But also you need to be looking at how you can lower the cost of doing your business. And I say, having full-time DBAs employed to manage databases, or having a limited amount of training done to be able to just get your team up and running with the basics that they need, and then having one person who's slightly more advanced knowledge whenever required. I've seen firsthand how we've been able to, a small ISV was able to support over 500 sites around Europe with 3 people on a support desk, and that was including some of the general support they were doing for the product day in, day out. So that kind of thing really helps scale up and earn good revenue through kind of a support business. And I've touched already on kind of shared best practices, being able to share things from other customers around through your development team and drive that through innovation to be able to get back out to market. In terms of revenue streams, then obviously you're looking at licensing, subscriptions, services that we've touched on. We've already spoken a little bit about support, training, consultancy, but also the auxiliary products and services that you provide. And that could be supporting building websites for them, or having customer portals that you develop on top of your existing systems, or even selling access into APIs through things like RAD Server or SOAP or however, or DataSnap. Being able to kind of sell that access into your customers and get them to buy into your services. And to do that, you need to be able to have the scale and the support behind that to make sure that as their business grows, that you're ready to grow with them. Now, obviously, businesses have costs. Software development is a key cost. Your core business functions are key costs. But when you're looking at the cost, make sure you're looking at both the cost of running it and include in staff time and customer experience, and the cost of business in terms of not being able to do it right, and what's the risk to you in the market of having a slow response time or a lot of downtime and things like that. Because the key thing really for any ISV is the customer relationships they build. Being able to bring those on is key to future revenue, and you want to be in the position of being a long-term trusted advisor with your customers, because then they're going to talk to you freely about what to do and to invest back into you. And the only way you can do that is by making sure that their experience in the long term is the best it can be. And the best starts in terms of the foundations you put in as the software, as an ISV, making sure their systems are up and running, making sure they're reliable, making sure you don't get hit with issues that get publicized because you haven't protected the data correctly, and that you are trusted all the way through. And it might be that you outsource some of those capabilities. It might be that some of the development that you need doing, you actually trust into solutions that you can then build on top of. And that's one of the key things around kind of open innovation and being able to really drive value out of the market, and why so many ISVs look at things like InterBase as their start point. Now, finally, in terms of deployment, obviously, you can look at either having download electronically through the web, or having kind of an embedded OEM environment where you install it onto physical hardware and then distribute out. Or you might even be at the point that with the setup and configuration, part of your revenue generation, your turnkey solution, is to actually have an engineer or a trainer go out to site to install the software, to get the customers up and running with their initial configurations, to be able to then start that long-term relationship. So to sum this part up, InterBase is really here to help enable your business. The key activities of an ISV, being able to develop specific industry software, is the key part that's going to play into the value creation of your business. To do that, you don't want to be worrying about all the cost development and the maintenance and the reliability of a data storage engine. You don't want to be worrying about keeping up with industry trends around data security and that kind of side of things. By having InterBase in your corner, you get experience from markets around the world with best practice from around the world to enable you to scale and to move into pretty much any vertical, and also to be able to work on a scale that works from a mobile phone all the way through to a large multi-user system with hundreds or even thousands of users connected. The ability to have a near zero administration database means you're able to help de-risk your customers, their business processes, and to help them run 24/7 in a reliable manner. That is value that you can extract out year on year with having InterBase in place. And it also opens up the door to having greater conversations with your customers because they trust you, they trust your system because it works, because it's there and it works, because it was always reliable. And that opens up the door to much richer revenue streams, to gaining more insight and a deeper relationship. And because you're then working with them as their business scales, you know that you can provide what they need regardless of where their business is going to be going. And that's something that's very, very powerful in terms of enabling a customer to get on board with you in the first place. InterBase also has some bespoke customer pricing for our ISVs. So once you're at that point of wanting to kind of get going, obviously we have the development solutions for you to, the developer editions for you to get going with, but you're then able to talk with our partner managers internally and come up with the right pricing model to support your business moving forward that's fair for everybody involved. Deploying InterBase couldn't be easier as well, and because of the fact it can be embedded directly into your installer, it means that it can be installed by pretty much anybody with next, finish type of approach. That makes deployment very simple, regardless of the solution that you're deploying out to. And that can reduce down the amount of time you need to spend on site getting the software up and running, which again provides more time for revenue generation and doing the other core things of business. So let's now look into the different versions of InterBase, and Mary's going to take you through that.
We have a couple different editions of InterBase that ISVs tend to use. They include InterBase Server, Desktop, and To Go. If you have multiple users and devices that need to connect to the same data, then InterBase Server is the best choice for your architecture. InterBase Server runs on both Windows and Linux, giving you the flexibility of connecting multiple different types of devices to the same database. InterBase easily scales up to hundreds of concurrent connections, and since it runs as well on a laptop as it does on a commercial grade server, it's a very flexible solution to accommodate your consumer demands and resources. The draw to InterBase Server is typically applications that need enterprise features like data encryption with over-the-wire encryption, as well as high-end performance and disaster recovery. The desktop edition has the same idea as the InterBase Server, except that it's only permitted to Windows and only to local database connections. So it's a sort of scaled down version of the server. It just doesn't have the same journaling capabilities that the server does. So if you have multiple applications, say 3 or maybe 4, on a single machine that need to talk to the database, then the desktop solution is the best version for your needs. InterBase To Go is an option for anyone wanting to add data storage to their applications, locally or by connecting to a remote InterBase server. InterBase To Go is an excellent choice for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and Linux applications that need to move data storage offline. With InterBase To Go, you can have standalone encrypted data storage and remove the need to install client drivers. The main benefit of InterBase To Go is that it provides you with a commercial-grade enterprise database with built-in encryption that you wouldn't really expect from a database outside of Oracle or even SQL Server Enterprise Edition. You have data at rest encryption, so your data is safe no matter where you are. A common platform for To Go is on mobile devices, so your Android or iOS platforms, but it's also available for Windows, Mac, and Linux as well. This means that you're using one database across all platforms, not finding a solution for each. You can even connect InterBase to Go to a server as the client driver and have that data that is on the smartphone or laptop and sync the data to the server and vice versa with no additional costs. The process is simple. You deploy the InterBase to Go database engine inside your application and sync that data with your server running in some location of your choice. With its near zero administration, small footprint, and easy install process, InterBase as a database software provides a fast, powerful, and reliable database engine capable of scaling users for any industry and business size. Fully customizable to your specific needs, InterBase is the database that continues to run. InterBase provides 256-bit encryption, matching federal regulations on personally identifiable information, and several other ways to keep your users' data safe. Providing database and column-level encryption with security and user roles to keep access to your data private, letting you focus on getting your secure application ready for market. InterBase supports effective disaster recovery planning through live backups, incremental dumps, multi-threaded restore, write-ahead logging, and point-in-time recovery. You can quickly revert databases to any second in time using journal archives. Journal archives can be stored off-device to provide the fast way to recover your server even if the backup hasn't run. You can even take snapshots of the database while users are still connected and altering data. While InterBase is finely tuned to perform with the Embarcadero developer toolset, Delphi and C++ Builder, you can still use InterBase with a variety of languages like PHP, Visual C++, and C, and using the standard interfaces like ODBC, JDBC, and ADO.NET. InterBase is also designed to be a low-maintenance or self-tuning database, making it great for embedded applications or areas with a small IT support team. With a multi-version architecture and multi-core SMP support, as a developer, you can take advantage of today's multi-core architectures and scale applications transparently across multiple CPUs. InterBase also possesses a number of tunable config parameters that allow higher end-user servers to operate optimally in their specific environments, allowing for a range of application types to take advantage of built-in monitoring tools that manage threads, transactions, procedures, and memory usage. Now, back in 2014, we added change view support to InterBase XE7, a patented subscription-based model used to subscribe to some data and identify what data has changed in the database. Change views not only helps to speed up applications, but lowers network traffic and costs by fetching only the changes made to the database. What more, only after a device is granted rights and subscribed to specific tables or columns of data, it tracks what is changing at the field level for that subscription and really lets you control who has access to the information relating to changes or updates to your database. Now that we've gone through the versions and what makes InterBase such a great database, let's take a look at some of the stories that our customers have shared with us.
Great, thanks, Mary. So the first one we're going to have a look at here is Opus Capita. Now, Opus Capita are a company based out in Finland who have this great system that allows companies to have all their accounts receivable and payable processed. It handles bringing in all the different suppliers and customers together, formatting all the information out and showing it back out in common formats with all the tracing and accountability and everything in place. And at a peak, they're used by large government organisations and large companies. So they're processing around about 500,000 new records a day, with InterBase powering the back end of that. Now, one of the things they really love there is the scalability. It's really been able to scale with them over time, and also the way that InterBase handles all the stored procedures and triggers, which they use extensively within their application. and that's a big way they kind of get blazingly fast database access and performance shared across a group of different applications they've built for both the web and the desktop. So yeah, a very very cool customer, and if you work it out, Mary, I think that's about 350 records a minute that are being processed at the peak, which
Oh
is
wow,
that's pretty that's pretty cool.
that's pretty intense. That's amazing.
So just as we're kind of talking about accounts and that kind of area, we have another one here, which is Bsoft or Bonevsoft, which is an accounting system from Bulgaria. Now they're an ISV. They've got around about 20,000 customers, including big companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers and Overgas Holdings, and even the local military in Bulgaria use their software. And it's basically a whole CRM type system from the accountancy point of view. And they're scaling from one to hundreds of users, and they've got support with their customer base for things like ISO 27001, getting that accredited through. And from their point of view, I know I've actually been out to visit these guys, and one of the great things that we saw was the ability to bring new things to market for them. When InterBase introduced the full 256-bit encryption at rest, they were one of the first guys to adopt it, and were able to then share with their customers, the importance of data encryption at rest, and also do kind of audits for their systems and help get things moved inside, and also expand their existing system with other data that they were currently storing out and around. Um, and that's been a great way for them to kind of expand through. And they use some of the very kind of cool features like write ahead logging as well, which means that it's even faster to use your database system. And they've been able to take some of that experience now and move it over to mobile, to get their first mobile applications going. And we've got a baby crying in the background.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe it's just my headphones.
No,
That's what
no,
everyone will presume.
that's
The
part of
baby.
the COVID working from home kind of scenario. So, uh, but anyway, let's rock on through.
So our next one is Management Plus. Now they're based in Salt Lake City, and they've developed electronic healthcare record and practice management software for over 25 years. They've always had a small developer team, so they use InterBase, the database made for developers in conjunction with Delphi to build and manage true native applications for all the platforms they support, including iOS and Android. They can meet all their customer needs and sizes and match regulatory regulations for healthcare certifications, and are also able to reduce the amount of time that they need to develop the applications by up to 20%.
Yeah, I remember having some conversations with these guys in the past, and certainly having InterBase to go out onto iOS and Android and being able to share some of the data structures between mobile and their desktop applications, and having some of that offline capability was a big driver and benefit for them being able to get forward and use InterBase,
Mm-hmm.
and being one of the only databases that supports mobile with the compliance side of things as well, with the on-disk encryption and so on, was yeah a pretty key thing for them, which
Yeah.
is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really allowed them to create software that's affordable for all of their users rather than, kind of separating it out where only specific users have been able to, um, if you will, afford within the industry. So they really are kind of have made their name as the go-to solution for healthcare or eye care healthcare leaders.
Yeah, of any size, which
Mm-hmm.
is it's a great example of being a good value ISV.
Mm-hmm.
So our next one that we're going to have a look at is Bionuclear. Now, Bionuclear are a distributor of clinical lab testing instruments, and they basically do about 50% of the Puerto Rico market. They've got over 440 clinics, and they're doing about 1.6 million tests annually. It's well, they certainly were before COVID. I don't even know how many more they're doing right now, but certainly, they've been using InterBase for a long time, and they actually chose it over Microsoft SQL because it was just much simpler to distribute and deploy, and also because of the remote management side of things. A lot of the labs are offline and in places that are a little bit harder to reach, and the connectivity isn't always great between those places. So having kind of the ability to have something that just runs and without having to have local DBAs on site or being able to get access was a key driver for them. It's really helped them control the cost of doing business and to provide the right business uptime that they need to. And through some of the kind of great features of InterBase, I know last time I spoke to them, they were beginning to do some work with and looking at change views. They've been able to kind of use remote connectivity with real time access into to changes and what's happening, and to have that centralized, secure, encrypted database model where they're able to kind of move information back and forth quite happily. And it's been a great way for them to be able to expand and move forward. And a bit like the Management Plus guys, they've been able to look at expanding out onto mobile in quite an easy way because it mirrors a lot of their existing business logic and makes it very manageable to move it through, and especially where compliance again is in place. Being able to kind of start looking at the customer side of things and have the patient data downloaded and still secure has been a big driver for them. And I think we've got this kind of slightly longer quote here, but it's one that I thought was kind of cool to kind of draw out from Julio's the lead software development engineer there. Because we're an extremely small development team, we need a solution that was easy to maintain remotely at a reasonable cost, but had all the features of an enterprise database. InterBase is a lot easier to maintain and is significantly less expensive than some of the other competition. It is also fast, secure, works great between sites, and is near admin free, lowering the total cost of ownership compared to SQL Server, which they were trialing at the point. InterBase has enabled our developers time to focus solely on R&D rather than supporting existing laboratory databases. We can work on InterBase with confidence because we rely on its scalability. Now, as I said earlier in the webinar, having come from an ISV background, I completely relate to the comments at the end there of being able to focus on the R&D because InterBase is taking care of the other stuff. It makes a huge difference to a small development team when you're not having to be the third line support when systems are playing up and it's going to be something to do with the database area. It makes a big difference. So I think the next one is yours, Mary. Par Springer Miller, I know one you know very well.
Yes, Park Springer Miller and I go way back, at least to the beginning of my time at Embarcadero. So Park Springer Miller is one of our older, sort of oldest, possibly even VARs for InterBase. Their software, SpaSoft, has been basically the industry standard for some of the finest hotels, resorts, and destination spas. For more than 15 years, they've provided the technology for resource management, activity tracking, web booking, finances, and the list really goes on. And behind the scenes, they use InterBase.
So yeah, I remember kind of Par Spring Miller as well quite well, and I think one of the key things for them with their database was they needed one that was very fast, had good speed and performance on a variety range of different equipment that their hotels were having in place. Some had just an off-the-shelf server, some had big foot server rooms that are kind of hard to access. So the admin-free version was a key feature for them, and especially as they've got quite a global customer base as well, haven't they? Having support 24/7 around the world in different time zones, you need to just make sure the system's working, and also having kind of Unicode support really helped open up access to the Asia market for them. Now, I believe you've had some kind of contact with them around the kind of payment association data security standard work as well that they've done, and
Mm-hmm.
there've been some bits they've been doing with encryption there as well, haven't they?
Yes, yeah, they do have quite a high requirement for the standard of encryption. So having 256-bit encryption pre-built in where they can just go through and activate that has really helped them with keeping their data secure for all of their customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the other things they've looked at as well is using different encryption keys yeah, on some of the finance data. Certainly, I think some of the credit card companies like to have different encryption keys for that compared to other things and so on as well. So, and again, all of that has been achievable directly through InterBase, and something that they can take onto mobile as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So the last one that we're going to have a quick chat about is always just a very, very fun one, and that's to do with the Mars Curiosity rover. If you want somewhere that's hard to access without any on-site DBAs, then really, yeah, no problem. We can make it happen, and that's really why InterBase was chosen to kind of go out there. And there's a whole host of other use cases that we could pick out, from military, from being used in black box recorders on aircrafts to in tanks and a whole load of other areas. InterBase really is out and about and around the world. NCR, who's one of the leading providers of POS systems, again they all use InterBase, and why? Because it just does what it says on the tin. It's low maintenance, easy to support in highly distributed environments, yet is reliable and secure, and keeps your business going. And at the end of the day, if your database isn't available and accessible, you're losing money. And that's what InterBase is there to help make sure you can avoid, and make sure your systems are up and running. So to that end, we have an InterBase VAR program. As part of the VAR program, you get to speak to people like Mary and myself and dedicated account managers at Embarcadero. We're able to support you along your life cycle. Say a number of the VARs we've been speaking about today have been using InterBase for many years, and some of them who are new to the table, so to speak. But the key thing here is that along your journey as an ISV, we have the right scale and support as your customer base grows and your customers grow, that you can support them. And we've seen through the case studies from the smallest to extremely high volume transaction counts. And we have volume license discounting that's specialised and bespoke for VARs, that we can sign you up onto an NDA and we can discuss about. And we also have the silent install that makes it very easy to employ and deploy. Deploy wherever we need to go. So if you want to find out more about that, then please just let us know and we'll get you in touch with one of our dedicated partner managers to help you along your journey. But now I think it's time for some Q&A. Okay, let's see if we can get the Q&A up and running. Hopefully you should be able to see me now.
Yes. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Mary. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And we've got to one quick poll question. Oh, no, maybe I haven't. I thought I'd saved it down. It doesn't look like it's refreshed it. So maybe we haven't got a poll question for today. But please go ahead if you have any questions at this point to put them in. There's a few in the queue already, but please go ahead and put those into the Q&A, and we'll answer those as we go through here. So we've got a question here about how to connect to InterBase, which different programming languages can be used to connect into InterBase. So obviously we've got the components there for Delphi and for C++ that are part of Rad Studio. So that's nice and easy, and that kind of allows you coverage across Windows, Mac, iOS and Android and Linux as well. There's also ODBC and JDBC.
Yeah, and I was also going to say, we also have integration even for like Visual C++ and even PHP and things like that as well. So you really do get a broad spectrum of languages you can connect to.
Yeah. There's a question here about administrating InterBase databases. Now, this is probably one that's going to fit your area of knowledge quite well, Mary. What tools can you use for administrating databases, and are they cross-platform?
There are quite a few tools that are out there that you can use with InterBase specifically. Beyond IB Console, which is going to be more Windows based only. There's another product called Aquadata Studio that I highly recommend. You can install upon Windows, Linux, and Mac as well. So really, no matter what platform that you're working on, you have access to your InterBase databases, no matter where they are.
Yeah, and Aquadata Studio is very good.
Hmm.
There's some really, really nice stuff from a developer's perspective. I know you've done a really good blog post on that one recently,
Hmm.
as well. But you know, being able to schedule SQL scripts to run, being able to almost like have some of the powers of pivot tables from Excel kind of built into an editor, which
Hmm.
is pretty cool. And also the ability to visually design and draw up your SQL statements. So if you ever struggle with kind of, is it an inner join, an outer join, a left or a right, and
Yeah.
being able to get all those things done is really quite
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, it really has a lot of features that even in some cases you might not think that you would need to use that are there for when those situations arise. You can really
Mhm.
do just about anything you want with the tool.
Yeah. Um, the other thing is obviously the Aquadata Studio is available if you've got RAD Studio or Delphi or C++ builder at the moment. If you move when you kind of renew or upgrade next to the Architect Edition, you'll get a copy of Aquadata Studio as well, and it also then enables database connectivity for a whole host of other different database platforms as well. So it
Hmm.
is way more than just InterBase and very, very useful.
Yeah.
Okay. A quick look at the other questions here. Um, what is meant by a simultaneous user?
So the simultaneous users are really just the current connected or concurrent users that are connected to the database at any moment in time. So if, say, you've got 100 users that are spread across your organization and you only have a license for maybe 50 of them, it's not meaning that only the same 50 can connect to the database. It's only that 50 at one time can connect to the database. So
Hmm.
any of your 100 users that you may have can connect at any given time as long as they don't exceed the 50 cap or whatever the maximum capacity for your database server is.
Yeah, and in terms of the licensing for InterBase, you can get either a server which includes a single user license.
Hmm.
You can get an additional single user. There's a
Hmm.
5 pack, a 10 pack, a 25 pack, a 50 pack, which all gets cheaper per user seat.
Hmm.
But also there's an unlimited user server, which if you're kind of putting it onto a web server and wanting to have as many people connecting at a time, or I think it's around about somewhere between about 80, 85 users, it actually works out cheaper just to go for the unlimited server.
Hmm.
Um, and every version of InterBase, the licensing includes the license for a hot backup server as well,
Hmm.
which not all other database engines do. So, it means that if there's ever a problem with the hardware on your InterBase server and it goes, that you can switch immediately to the hot backup,
Hmm.
um, and you're off and ready to run. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's all included as part of the licensing as well, which is very, very cool. Okay. Um, we kind of mentioned a few different platforms. Somebody's just asking for a quick recap in terms of what platforms are supported by InterBase
Hmm.
and the
So
different versions. Yep.
yeah, so overall, our servers supported on Windows and Linux. Desktop edition is Windows only. Then the to-go edition you can install on Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, and Linux as well.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Someone's saying here they're really excited by the change views, which is pretty cool. So which versions is that available in? Um, So the great thing is change views, unlike some other kind of, well, I'm going to loosely call it replication technologies, but you quite often you'll find that you have additional licensing for that kind of technology stack. It's just included as part of InterBase Server, and it's also included in InterBase To Go. One of the really exciting things that happened a year or so ago now is that InterBase to Go, a license for unlimited runtime royalty-free distribution for mobile, was included with Delphi and C++ Builder and Rad Studio Enterprise and Architect editions. So if you've got any of those, enterprise or above editions of the Embarcadero development tools, then you got a copy of InterBase to Go license there, ready to go for mobile, which is brilliant. And you can do everything you want to do with change views, all the encryption at rest. It's all included as part of that license, which is pretty cool. The only version of InterBase that doesn't include change views is IB Lite, which is our kind of single user free to run anywhere version, which is really there as a replacement for those people who've been moving from Paradox tables across and needed somewhere to go quick and easy. Then obviously the robustness of InterBase, and then if you want to add additional features or your customers want to upgrade to have additional features and security and everything, then you can do that for the price of an InterBase server, so a very easy migration path. But yeah, change views is there in to Go and server with no extra cost, which is phenomenal. Okay, question here. Are you able to connect to InterBase to Go from a remote machine?
Yes. So when you install the to-go license onto either your Android device or iOS, Windows, Mac, any of those devices, yes, you can configure it to connect to the remote InterBase server somewhere, sitting either in the cloud or somewhere else. It essentially goes from being a sort of embedded database to a client driver that actually allows for that connection to take place.
Yeah, absolutely. Great use of it as a client driver. But what it won't allow you to do is you can't actually have remote connections coming into that interface to go.
Yeah.
That would be in breach of any kind of licensing element of it, and certainly, the setup there, it doesn't do it out of the box. So
yeah.
Okay.
It looks like we have a question here. Is the desktop version single user only?
Yeah, so the desktop version, you can buy multiple licenses for it, which means you can install it onto multiple machines. But the difference between to go and desktop, basically to go allows you to have the database engine running inside your application. So as your application starts up, the InterBase server in essence starts inside your application, but exclusively for your application. With the desktop version, it's a bit like server. So you can have multiple connections into it, but it only is local connections. So the use case there is, in the past, we used to see a lot of customers would have their kind of reporting application, and they'd have their CRM application, and they'd have some analytics engine, and they'd have all these different programs that the user could log into, but they all needed to connect back to the same database. So that's fine, and that's almost like a server configuration, but it all had to be on the one local machine. So that's why the desktop edition exists for Windows. That's to deal with that kind of use case where you need multiple applications connecting to the same database, but all on the same machine. Whereas to go is very much about a single database with a single application. I hope that's clear for you, David. So that's cool. Yeah, thanks for the explanation. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, in terms of change views, one of the things that's quite cool about change views, just kind of, so I'm going to paraphrase a slightly longer question here. One of the things that's very cool about change views is that the cost of the database isn't particularly high. And that's one of the things that was very cool about what we kind of put forward, and is very unique about it. So change views basically works inside InterBase. We've got every transaction that connects in has kind of a sequence number basically, and we're able to identify where your connection comes in and what's active, what's committed, and also what's being written at the same time. So if Mary connected to the database and started writing, say 10,000 changes, And while she's in the middle of doing that, I connect in and I write one change and then disconnect before she's finished. The next time I connect up, the change view subscription will know that although Mary was connected before me, she hadn't actually saved yet what she was doing. So when I ask for what's changed for me, it will tell me about the stuff that Mary's changed, even though she'd originally connected before I did last,
Mhm.
which, if that kind of makes sense. So it's, that's the thing that's, phenomenally powerful about it, because typically, a lot of change logging, you do things in sequence. So if Mary had sequence number 10 and I connected in and I made sequence number 11 change, if I come back and say, right, what's changed since number 11? Everything that's got 10 that Mary's changed, I'm not going to find out about. And that's what change views gets around, because it's all ACID compliant and we're able to kind of take that footprint and know exactly what to give you back. It means that we can make sure you never lose a change. And it also means you don't need to stay connected as well, which, some other technologies you have to stay connected to be able to get notified of the changes that happened. So that's why it's really, really suitable and scalable and ideal for kind of IoT use cases. And the other thing, in terms of the load question, there is no logs on the server for change views. It's completely logless. Um, so what that means is that it's not bloating out the database with extra data every time changes are happening just to keep track of it. And that's really, change logging in that kind of way kind of works for a small distribution. But if you're looking at distributing tens of thousands of nodes or whatever, then that kind of change pattern just doesn't work. It doesn't scale above 4 or 5 really.
Mhm.
And change views does without the same cost on the database for the 10,000th node as there is for the first node, which is practically zero because there is nothing being changed or logged in the database. We're just
Mhm.
kind of keeping a track of where you are and what you need to be told about what's changed afterwards. So it's in terms of load, change views is ultimately scalable, which is why it won an IoT award in I think 2015 for the Total Telco Awards for most innovative use of data, because of the way it works and it can scale and kind of provide those kind of use cases. And we've actually seen customers putting InterBase in alongside SQL Server and other kind of database engines where they've got data they need to distribute out to a high number of places. And then there's a little process that just kind of keeps the data in sync into the InterBase database locally at head office. And then all the remote devices then connect into InterBase to find out what's changed in the core systems. So it's a very useful way to be able to augment what you're doing, to have a copy of InterBase and just get access to things like change views without kind of ripping out or changing the whole other system, that is, it's a big hard work to do. So yeah, in terms of the load and stuff, very, very good. Which probably
Mhm.
takes us on to the next question here, which is, what was your favorite feature of Interbase? So I'm going to have to pipe up for change views because I just say, I think it's a fantastic and very unique feature. But what about you, Mary?
I would have to agree with you for the most part. In 2020, we also just released table spaces, so helping
Very cool.
for performance and optimization. I actually just wrote a blog post about it. It is slowly becoming one of my favorite features, just because I used to be a DBA, so for me, knowing that with table spaces you can sort of increase database runtime performance and also be able to optimize the hardware that you're working with,
Mhm.
that's kind of becoming one of those super cool features that I'm really excited about showing to more of our customers.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not familiar with table spaces, it gives you the ability to tell Interbase which tables and indexes you want on which disk. You can actually kind of partially split out the database.
Mhm.
So if you've got a solid state drive and you've got tables that are getting a hit constantly, you can optimize that part of the database onto the solid state drive. And if you've got indexes that are constantly being updated, you could have a second drive and have the indexes stored on there. So the sequential kind of speed improvement really kind of comes to the fore.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think over the next months or so, that's going to be how to make Interbase scream is going to be, table space is going to be in the top 5 there for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, I'm kind of thinking we're getting to the end of the question log here. There's been a couple of duplicate bits that have been put through, which I think we've kind of covered through.
Mhm.
Um, In terms of the final question here, in terms of VARs, how do the agreements work? So the best thing is if you're interested in becoming an Interbase VAR or you're kind of considering Interbase for future projects, then feel free just to kind of give us a shout directly, um, or kind of come through to one of the sales team at Embarcadero, and they'll be able to direct you to somebody who will become your account manager locally within your region, and we can then kind of talk to you, specifically about the contracts and how they will work.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Basically, in short, the more you're distributing and pushing out, we've got some amazing deals and bits that we can work with you on. But the key thing that's critical for us is understanding about what your business is, how you're looking to use the database, so we can work with you to kind of help you get the best from it, and also to kind of make sure Interbase is out there as widely as it can be. And
Mhm.
so there's some great stuff now, especially with a lot of people going and adding mobile applications on. Being able to have the mobile side of things to be able to move the data from mobile across to desktop seamlessly. There's some great stuff to be able to work with there. And now, especially because the mobile part is included with enterprise and architect licenses for Rad Studio. It's cheaper than ever to be able to tap into Interbase and get going. So uh, yeah, come through, have a chat with us, and we can certainly kind of help you move in the right direction. Okay, guys, I think we're gonna probably draw this to a close now. I think we're through all the questions. Mary, any last comments?
No, just to kind of piggyback off what you said, if you're interested in InterBase and becoming a VAR, please reach out to us. We're always here to help.
Absolutely. Well, nice questions. Been a fun webinar, guys, and thank you for joining us. Happy coding, and we look forward to hearing from you and the fun things you're up to with Interbase. Take care now. Bye.